Yes, indeed. Welcome to the Bladtcast. As always, I am the titular Bladt in the cast, Christian Bladt, and very excited to welcome to the show for the very first time someone I've known for a very long time. I don't think we need to talk about how long we've known each other because then math gets involved. But the first friend I made when I moved to Los Angeles 22 years ago, my friend Allison Intrieri. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great and excited to talk to you about what's new and what's going on. But I think my audience is going to want to know, how'd you like breakfast? Now,
Oh
we
my
went
God.
to a great place in Burbank called Tallyrand. It is definitely the old schools, like diner style with like the leather booths and all that. How was Tallyrand for you? It was your first time.
I loved it. I love the waitress. I think she's my favorite part about it. I wanted to put her in a little baggie and take her with me.
Would have had to be a very large baggie.
Yes, very large baggie, but I didn't understand a word she said because she was talking so fast, but it was totally enjoyable. And then the food was great and it's just cute. It reminds me of like a diner version of the smokehouse in over in Burbank, right? Is
Yeah,
that a
also,
Burbank place?
yeah, it's another one of Burbank's finest establishments.
Yes.
This episode brought to you by the board at Burbank Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
So please, when when you're looking to spend those vacation dollars, come to Burbank. We're close to everything. But yeah, it was fun, and yeah, so this waitress we had, she did talk very fast. She had a very thick accent. Uh, she reminds me of a character from the sitcom Benson, which is not necessarily the most current and relatable reference, but for somebody who knows the show, they remember. And she would go really fast through the specials. Like, let me tell you what's on the board, and then she would just kind of go through it again. And it was fun because she would, have like little jokes that were song lyrics. Like at one point, the table next to us, she's like, and if you can't find me, just call me. My number's 8675309.
Oh,
So I don't even know if you heard that.
309.
Uh, so it was fun and better than your favorite restaurant, House of Pies in Los Angeles. I don't know why you always want to go there, but
I don't even know how we got to House of Pies. There's so many, I mean, God bless this now, this landmark, but there's just so many other places. And it reminds me kind of a dive bar we used to go to in when I lived in Chicago, and you were only there because you had had a lot to drink,
sure,
and
of
it
course.
stayed open till like 4 a.m. in the morning, which is crazy. No bar should be open until 4 a.m. But that's what it reminded me of a little bit. It reminds me of that. Like you kind of go there late at night, but everything else around it should be closed. It should be your only option. And it's not. And that's why I still don't understand why you used to drag me there all the time.
Well, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on that. But for anybody visiting Los Angeles in the Los Feliz area, the sign sometimes spins. I haven't seen it spin in decades, but
Me neither.
it's the House of Pies. It's shaped like a slice of pie, and you would think, Allison, if some place is called House of Pies, what's the thing that they should make that's delicious?
Pies.
Yeah, what's not good there?
Pies.
Yeah, the only thing we were ever like, well, at least the French fries were good.
Yeah, the French fries. Yeah, the French fries were
Or
good.
they were at least okay.
Yeah, they were
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So,
They let
yeah.
my dog eat there, though. Don't you remember we brought my dog one time?
You mean
Well,
potato? I don't.
that's a little like that kind of
Yeah.
says everything that they let you bring your dog. It wasn't.
I think we sat outside with potato
Oh
though.
yeah, we probably did. Okay, okay.
Yeah. That's.
Then
I think that is one of the more walkable areas of Los Angeles. So it makes sense that they, some restaurants, they even have the little water dish for a dog,
yes, it's
things
very
like that.
sweet.
Yeah.
But to
But
let the dog eat inside, I think is
that's
is
unfortunate.
yeah, it would doesn't seem right. Doesn't seem
No,
I
it
love my
doesn't.
dog.
So yeah, look, we could take people on the restaurant tour of Los Angeles of the early 2000s. Maybe the next time you're on, we'll talk about birds and La Poubelle. But
Yes.
I don't want to get too bogged. No, we know each other because I worked on Law and Order Special Victims Unit in New Jersey. You
Yes.
worked in the office in Los Angeles, and then I moved out here, and amongst the only people I knew were the SVU people in Los Angeles. And I think you'd only been working there for a little while. You weren't brand new, but
Pretty new.
I don't think we'd ever even talked on the phone. So I got to know you. And then unfortunately, I moved out here, as some people know, with my friend Tim Sicardo, who is a recent guest on this podcast. And you were like kind of the only new person I knew. So it was a lot of like, what are you doing? What can I
Yes.
hang out of that? But you did also have you had a lot of events at that party at that apartment that you lived on,
Oh, yeah.
Carlton Way,
Oh, God.
which is, I've parked my car on Carlton Way in the years since. And I'm like, oh, is it going to be okay here?
I know, right?
But yeah, so you were always very inviting, and look, if there was a place to be, it was that Carlton Way apartment. There was barbecuing. You had some interesting neighbors. You could have turned that into a sitcom. I think some of those people that.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That was God, you're taking me back now, because I'm remembering this was so long ago that there was no DVR. There was only the
VHS.
VHS.
Yeah.
And I had all these shows that I watched, and I would ask you to record them for me because I was working and you weren't at the time.
At the
And
time, yes.
It got to the point where, like, I remember you got mad at me once because I needed something recorded, but I didn't watch what you had already recorded for me. And
so I had to use another tape.
You were really frustrated with
this sounds like me, unfortunately.
Yes. But how nice of a friend were you at that time that you would record my shows for me?
I feel like I was probably just it was karma, because I did used to, especially when I worked in New York City or near New York City, and my home was about an hour away. I would call my mom a lot. Hey, I need you to record this thing for me.
Yeah.
And
Your mom.
well, yeah, but so your mom wasn't going to be able to record anything for you, because what's she going to do? Mail it from Pittsburgh?
Yeah,
so
true.
you knew I recorded plenty of shows. The only problem would be if I'm like, whoa, I'm recording something else at that time.
Yeah.
But I forgot about that. Yeah, and it was and we really bonded over our favorite show, Alias, which was really good for a while. I think it was actually like a really good show for a while. It loses its way a little bit as it goes on.
I don't know what happened to that show, because it was really good, and I kind of would blame it on the mom leaving. Remember the mom? She was such
a good character.
Yeah, she was almost like a superhero.
Yeah,
but like the villain, Yeah. And then I guess maybe she didn't want to do the show anymore, and then people think the show jumped the shark, but I don't know. I think it was when, after she lost her memory and her boyfriend was married, that the show sort of went downhill.
I completely forgot about that. Yes, that might do it. And it's funny because, like, when the show started, Bradley Cooper was this like minor character.
Oh yeah.
And then he started working more and more. And so then they would like bring him back as a guest star. But by that point, I was like, yeah, we don't have time for you. Victor Garber was tremendous on that show as her dad.
Oh yeah.
Because,
her dad.
But what I was talking about this recently with someone who's working on a script, and that show accomplished something that I think wasn't and still isn't that common for network TV. They like blew your mind at the one season where they're like, yeah, this group that she's been working for this whole time. Yeah, she's actually one of the bad guys. She thought she was, they told her that she was one of the good guys. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. So it was like a fun surprise. And look, it's a J.J. Abrams show. So it was, it's interesting how much stems from that. J.J. Abrams ends up sitting next to Tom Cruise on an airplane, and they hit it off, and he tells him about Alias, and Tom Cruise has never seen it. So he sends him like DVDs of the whole series, and the next thing you know, he's directing Mission Impossible 3. So
that's so crazy. I had no idea that was that was the situation. You know what's funny? I have two stories about J.J. Abrams. The first one is when I moved out here, I did a ton of extra work, and Felicity had just started.
Nice.
And I was on Felicity a bunch. So Jennifer Gardner was actually on the show when I was an extra on the show. Like, I remember, for whatever reason, being at craft service with her. And he directed an episode. And, you know, this was at a time when, like, I had no idea who he was. And I was like, oh, who's this guy, you know?
Yeah.
And he's not, like, super tall either. So I just was like, oh, who's this guy who's directing this episode? And then you mentioned something before you mentioned Tom Cruise. Oh, and then the other thing is I took a TV writing class at UCLA. I took like 5 actually, but one of them had John, I think his last name's Eisendrath, and he was a writer and producer on the show. And he came in to talk to us, and he was like, we have no idea. At the end of the first season, there was this big red ball. Do you remember that?
I do, actually. Yeah.
He's like, we have no idea what that red ball is. He's like, but we feel that the questions are more interesting than the answers. And that was really true with that show and with Lost. Like, they just kept throwing questions at you. And so it was constantly like, what's the button? What's the button? Like on Lost or.
Yeah. Why is there a polar bear, you know, on this island?
Yes, exactly. And then once they answered it, everybody was pissed off with the finale. They're like, nobody wanted the answer.
With Lost in particular, they said, well, we'll tell you what the show is not. And it's not like some kind of purgatory where they're all waiting for the ultimate judgment. And then they go and they do the series finale and they're like, yeah, that thing we said it's not, it's actually what it was. And it was very clear they didn't know what they were doing. And that can be fun, but you should have a pretty good idea, you know?
Yeah.
That's why I will defend I don't know if you were a fan of How I Met Your Mother, but people hate the way it ended. But it was exactly the way that when they started the show, they're like, this is the ending. They even filmed the ending with the kids who got much older. So they have from like the first season, they have what the ending is. And they're like, no, we just stuck with it because that was a story we wanted to tell. And I'm like, I think it's kind of a sweet story, but people were not happy.
I liked How I Met Your Mother. There were some really great episodes, like The Naked Man. Do you remember The Naked Man? That was pretty much one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, no, it was a really fun show. So I was a fan of that, and I am of the minority that it ended well. One show that may never end is the show we both worked on, our Special Victims Unit, and it's funny to think about because I worked on a few different seasons. I basically worked on seasons like 3 and 4 and like 7. And what is it? Season 26 now?
Yeah, season 26.
Yeah.
I think is it going into 26 or is it going into 27? I can't remember.
Yeah, one or the other. Either way. Yeah. It
it kind of doesn't matter at this point. But once you pass 20. I was on it from 2003 until 2007. And I started as the researcher on the show. And then I got staffed and then I left. And then I went back in 2017 and I actually had to move to New York when I went back. It was a requirement.
I remember seeing you before that. And by the way, that's one of the things that people who watch that show might not realize is that, yes, they film it in New York, but all the writers were typically, and they are again now, based in Los Angeles. So it's, they would always fly out. So yeah, you got to work on it a second time. And I remember hearing from you that you were going to move to New York, and I was like, oh my gosh. And and you were there for a while, right? It was a couple of years. Yeah. Okay.
2 years.
So what's it like working on a show that far apart with a huge gap in between? You know, is it like, oh my gosh, I have to watch, I don't know, 100 episodes to catch up or whatever?
Yeah. I think there's a formula, and granted the show has, and you know this because you worked on the show as well, that there's a formula. It's a procedural. Somebody's in the case of SVU, somebody's either raped or murdered or both. And then we investigate, and then we usually get the bad guy. Once in a while, you don't. So that kind of structure of the show doesn't really change. I mean, that's what Dick Wolf's brand is known for. So in that sense, I didn't feel like I needed to watch every episode. And also there's no way to do it. There's just, it's impossible.
Especially now. Yeah. And then obviously the genius of Dick Wolf putting the show together is that you have, the original Law and Order was structured a little bit more by the numbers, but the first half is the cop half. The second half is the courtroom. SVU mostly follows that, it's still the same idea. It's like, all right, story ripped from the headlines, interesting legal case. Let's make them work together. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you know why Dick Wolf came up with the format in that style where it's split right down the middle at the half-hour mark?
Do I know?
Yes.
Well, do you know?
I do, because I heard him say it in an interview.
I don't know. Tell me.
So the show was pitched originally in 1989. And at that point, the belief was there's no market for hour-long reruns. So what you were going to do to that show was split them up into two parts. Every episode was going to be 2 half hours, which is the funniest thing to think about because of the amount of Law and Order SVU, Law and Order Criminal Intent, the amount of hours spread at one point almost exclusively on the USA Network. It's spread out on a few different networks now. So it's so funny to think that was the reason why. It was like, well, we're going to break these up into half hours.
Right.
But then it's like, no. You got any 2-hour episodes? How about some 4 hours? You got anything in mind? Just because of how much cable television to this day it still fills. So
I mean, that's fascinating, and it just speaks to how smart Dick Wolf is when it comes to a product, and a brand. Like he really has reinvented himself like many times. When first, once when the Law and Orders kind of got long in the tooth when I was there the first time, because I mean, I think the original Law and Order was on the bubble for a minute, and then one of his selling points is that he knows how to make shows for a specific budget. Like he's very good at bringing a show in under budget. And that's one of the reasons why they love working with him. And also, overseas, these shows do very well. So that's another reason.
And then also the format, gets sold to other countries. Like I don't know how many seasons they did of it, but I know that there was a Law and Order UK that they would air on BBC America, so it's like it's kind of like The Office, you can take that and it's like, you can apply that anywhere,
Right. Yeah. True.
So no, it's definitely a brilliant idea. And the original pilot of Law and Order, fun fact, was shot for CBS. And they passed on it. They said, nope, we don't want this. So that original pilot airs as like this. I just looked up because I wasn't sure what they did with it. It aired as the 6th episode of the regular series. But the director of that episode, when you direct the pilot of a show, you get something like in perpetuity throughout the whole run of it. Well, because they didn't air his as the pilot, that director's name is John Patterson. So he did not get that. Yeah. But that's why sometimes
because if you're hired to do the pilot, like you should still get it. I mean, in my opinion, I'm
right. And I am sure that Mr. Patterson spoke to the Directors Guild about this, but apparently that's not how it worked. But that's why, you'll have a big name director for a pilot. Former coworkers of ours, Michelle Fazekas and Tara Butters, Michelle taking over Law and Order SVU recently. They had a show called Reaper, and Kevin Smith directed the pilot for that reason. Because he's like, oh, I'm going to come in and I'm going to. Now I liked that show. I thought it was fun. I really thought it was fun. It had a nice sense of humor. They also did a great Marvel tie-in show with the Peggy Carter character. It was called Agent Carter.
Yes.
So I think I enjoy their work, and it'll be interesting for her to kind of do what you did, come back into SVU. And,
I mean, that's the thing that's so interesting. When I saw in the Deadline article announcing that she was going to be taking over the show, I immediately wrote her, and I think the subject was like, what? Just because it is so crazy. Michelle and Tara were already on the show when I started on the show, and Michelle is partly responsible for me getting into that into the Dick Wolf camp. She had put me up for like a PA job or something, and I didn't get it. And then there was the job of the researcher came around, and I was put up for it again by another writer, Amanda Green, and then I got the job. Which, it's funny, when I didn't get the PA job, I remembered walking around sad, thinking I'll never work in this industry, and that was my one shot. And then I got in, and I saw the PA that was constantly just like Xeroxing scripts. It was back when everybody got, the hard copies and collating and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, I have the best job ever. I do all the research for the writers, and I get to like story ideas. And,
it's interesting because I was the script coordinator on both sides of it. And it's funny to think about how little of that job probably is the way it was when I did it, because it's like, well, we used to have to fax pages to the actors, and now you email everything. There's probably like a shared drive, and they download it and all that. And just the amount of paper we had to keep in the production office in New Jersey was insane, so it is funny to think about that. But then I think about like, what about like 20 years before, when you were sending out scripts on, I don't know, like Hill Street Blues? It was hard to make copies, like how did you do that? See, these are the things I think about. I want to talk about somebody who was a script coordinator in the 70s. Did you use like the old mimeograph machines? Like maybe like my elementary school had, where like the dittos came out with the purple ink, Can you imagine getting a script in smeared purple ink?
Oh God. Yeah. No, I had a friend who worked on Cheers, and he talked about using a typewriter to type all the scripts. And he was saying, like, now as an executive producer on, I think he was the last thing I remember that he worked on was Modern Family. He was telling me that when people give him scripts and they're not formatted, he just throws them out, because he's like, I used to have to use a typewriter. I used to have to hit,
you had to set the margins, and you had to make sure. Yeah. Oh, that's crazy. So, that's funny.
I mean, imagine that amount of work. God, whoever created Final Draft like saved us all.
Yeah. And it's funny to think about, how long, SVU and the Law and Order brand has been around. I mean, it really is kind of like the Simpsons of procedural television, and just the sheer number of people that, you'll work with and get to know there. There were a lot of really nice people. There were some characters, and I was telling you a story that my favorite former coworker of mine is, of course, Ice-T. And it was I think I've told this story before on the podcast, but we had one of those mandatory sexual harassment seminars everybody had to go to. And Ice came in a few minutes late. The only seat that was open was the one next to me, so he sat next to me. And I felt like, and by the way, there's people have an impression of Ice-T, and he was actually a pretty easygoing guy. He was, he kept to himself for the most part. Coco, who people know, would be on set a fair amount when he was in the office in New Jersey. But the sexual harassment, like, supervisor, it's not somebody with the company, you bring somebody outside. It was like, she was like focused right on him, and everything that she said, she was like telling Ice-T. And I'm like, I don't think you have to really worry about it. But it was kind of very funny, because it was it's like, what she heard about me? Oh, it's Ice-T.
It's Ice. One of the nice things about being able to move to New York for the show the second time is you really got to spend a lot of time on set, where when you're working on a show that I think I can say that Law and Order SVU is the only show that I've worked on in my career that actually filmed in the same city where I was living when I moved to New York for the show.
Yeah.
So you would go out for your episodes for other shows like Chicago Justice and in East New York, but there's a budget for the writers to fly out there, be put up in a hotel, so you only get to go for like maybe a couple of days of scouting, and then you're there for maybe a couple of days of shooting. You don't stay that long. It's like 4 days. And so with being on set and my offices being right down the hall from set, I would I produced every single episode. I was there 24/7 in terms of all the meetings and everything, like the post-production meeting, not the post-production meeting, the pre-production meeting, the concept meeting, casting, hair and makeup, like all of it. So once your episode finally started shooting, you're just sitting on set the whole time. And in between takes, the actors would sometimes come into Video Village and talk to you. And Ice was just the nicest guy. I mean, he would sit there and he would just tell me stories forever, and you could ask him anything and he'd be like, and he just would tell you. And it was, and one of the cooler things that he did was we wrote an episode, Michael Chernichen and I, and he got Snoop Dogg to be in the episode. And that
wow.
was so cool. I very rarely get starstruck, and I wouldn't have thought I would have been starstruck, but we were all in this tight recording studio filming a scene, and he came in, and I think everybody, like even the actors on the show were kind of like performing for him a little bit.
Yeah, well, Snoop is one of those larger than life, personalities. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? I can imagine seeing him.
Yeah.
When I was a page at Saturday Night Live, when I was a page at NBC, one of the weeks of Saturday Night Live, the musical guest was Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, and I forget who else. It was a big thing, and the literal cloud of marijuana smoke that was down the hallway on the 8th floor on Monday after the show was so thick that they had to get these fans to blow it out of the building for the Rosie O'Donnell audience that lined up in the same place Monday morning. And I do remember, I'm like, what's the fans all about? And they're like, well, the smoke didn't go away, and the smell lingered for a little while.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those are the fun problems you only run into in a certain kind of TV production.
Yes.
I feel like my audience will be upset with me if I didn't ask if you have anything fun to say about one of the first things you did when you moved to LA. Is that you worked on Star Trek Enterprise. I don't know what level of interaction you had with the cast or anything. I'm not going to lie. There's definitely a few nerds who watch my channel. So if they're like, why didn't you ask any team nerds? Yeah, I got it. Yeah. That's who
nerdy to me.
Yeah. So is there anything anybody was like super nice? I'm always looking for like, because I'll always talk about people who've known me long enough know that I will never stop myself from saying something bad about Chris Kattan, who was in the Saturday Night Live cast when I was an intern. There's really only one person who I'll name in show business that I don't like, and it's him. So if you have a good thing or a bad thing, I know my audience would appreciate it, but we can lean towards good,
Yeah. Okay. Let me think about it for a second. So that was an interesting experience for a lot of reasons. One, I did a Writers Guild fellowship, and I don't know if it exists anymore. I actually don't think it does, but they used to take, aspiring writers and put them on shows. And it was a program that you had to apply for. You had to have a script. At the time, I wanted to be a comedy writer, wanted to do half hour. And I had an Everybody Loves Raymond spec that I used to apply for a Star Trek job.
Sure.
And I got the job, but just this idea that I had this half hour sitcom to get a job on Star Trek is.
Well, they're basically the same show, Allison.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly,
Loves Raymond and Star Trek. Yeah.
100%.
Hard to tell the difference.
Yeah. Nagging mom.
I could see Brad Garrett being on either show, to tell you the truth.
Actually I could too. I could see him in
he'd probably have to be an alien, Brad, just to take advantage of the height. But
yes.
So you write and Everybody Loves Raymond, which I feel like I heard this story some time ago, but I forgot that little fun fact. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got the job. I wasn't a Star Trek fan. I was a mix of very intimidated when I started on the show, just being very young, and it was my first time on a writing staff. And the other part of it was I was also a little, I don't know how to say it, but I remember thinking I learned how many Star Trek fans were out there when I got the job, right? Because
Sure.
my sister had just gotten married and I'd gone to her wedding. I started the job at the end of August, and I think she got married somewhere before that. And everybody at the reception was like, "I hear you got a job on Star Trek," and it made it. I mean, I remember being like, "Oh God, I didn't realize how many people liked the Star Trek." I mean, I liked the movies. I went to the Star Trek movies. I thought, but I never really watched the series. So I sort of remember thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to write for a Star Trek show, but this is an opportunity to get my foot in the door."
Sure.
And then once I got in there and I was in the writer's room every day with all the writers, and you really are kind of a fly on the wall. And there's so much humor that happens in a writer's room. There's so much joking. I mean, I remember at one point the writers were they're trying to come up with story ideas, and so they throw out ridiculous stuff, and it sort of is to like relieve the tension of like how stressful it is to try to figure out what the next episode is going to be. And I remember there was a character named Reed on the show, and they were like, "Well, what if we did an episode where we find out Reed can't read or something?" And, just stuff like that, So, but yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. I was very nervous in the beginning. I didn't really know the language and everything like that, and I didn't know a lot of the.
I'm sorry, you didn't learn to speak Klingon before your first day?
I did not.
That sounds like a mistake. Although for that show, you probably would have needed to learn to speak Vulcan. But either way, you could have double majored and learned them both.
Right. And I remember I had to be up at the whiteboard. They would beat out the episode, and I had to be the one that was writing it down. And because I didn't know the terminology, when they would just use a regular word in English, I'd be like, did they just say car or mat or plane? Like I was so nervous. And then one of the things that they had was they had a library of VHS tapes with the shows on them. And I really went back and I watched as much as I could. I would go home every night and watch like Next Generation and Voyager and everything, so that when I would come in every day, I would be more informed. And I think, just when you think of like what impresses people that you work with is in this industry, it's making that extra effort and putting in the hours and all of that. And so I would read a ton of scripts. And then by the end, I remember thinking, I would love to work here. I would be so lucky to work on this show. I didn't end up working there. I ended up the fellowship was like 2 months, and then it ended. And so then I was kind of out of work for a little bit before I got my next job. But to answer your question about like the actors and everything like that, like funny stories. Well, I remember the girl that played T'Pol was dating Eddie Furlong. Is that
That's funny because yes, from Terminator, and her name was Jolene Blaylock. That actress.
Yes, and was absolutely beautiful. But at the premiere, so one of the things that was kind of shitty about my time on the show was it was September 11th. So we had that happen while I was there. I mean, I'd only been there for like a few weeks when that happened, and they started closing down the studio and not letting premieres happen anymore. And our premiere was the last premiere they were going to allow happen before they made that decision. Like no more tours, nothing. So, and people don't know this, but when before 9/11, you could just walk on the Paramount lot. Like there was no one checked your ID, nothing. You just walk on. And then after that, they were looking under cars for bombs and everything. It was kind of, it really changed things. But anyway, he came to the premiere, and I remember, and I think he had,
that's Jolene Blaylock for our visual audience.
Yes.
I figured I would do my audience a favor and find her from the Mirror Universe, where it's the only place where you can explain, like, well, we don't need to cover her stomach for any reason. because in the mirror universe, I don't know if they did any mirror universe stuff when you were there. Everybody's horned up 24/7. They're everybody's ready to just
Oh
go
yeah.
after it in the mirror universe. So Eddie Furlong was there.
God. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Eddie Furlong was there. She was dating him. And, I got to go to the stages a couple times and just, again, like I had done extra work for like a couple of years when I first moved out here. So for me, being on set wasn't that big of a deal
sure,
anymore. I'd been on
exactly.
everything. And so I kind of, everyone was saying to me, like, oh, have you gone to the set yet? Have you gone to the set? And I hadn't, and I didn't really care. And then they took me and I couldn't believe how cool it was. Just the most amazing set ever. Just so
I
cool.
I
So,
can imagine a Star Trek set
yeah.
being unlike anything else. Like
Yeah.
I had the fortune of walking around just a couple of the Mad Men sound stages, which was
Oh
unbelievable
God,
because,
yeah.
but that's also not a show I started watching when I was a toddler. So to be able
Yeah.
to see like a bridge and all of that. To what you're saying about Star Trek, it reminded me that for years I was doing shows sort of similar to my podcast. They were podcasts, they were live streaming shows for a network called AfterBuzz TV. I would talk about a lot of Marvel and some other shows. And when I started doing the show for Star Trek Discovery, excuse me, which was the new show at that time, being on a live stream and a podcast that had the word Star Trek in it, it was unbelievable. Um, and just sort of that opportunity of being associated with something with Star Trek, you're like, oh, wow, look at how many more people are watching live
Right.
and commenting and in the chat just because it has those two words in it. I was never a fan and I was never on, but the hugest show on AfterBuzz at that point was Game of Thrones. So they would have literally like thousands and thousands of people. Like, I don't know if you've ever been on a YouTube chat where it's live and it's just like scrolling, like you can't even look at it. It's moving so fast.
Right.
Things are a little slower over on the Bladtcast when it comes to the live chat, but we do love our people who chat.
Yeah.
Well, I obviously you're here today because one, I'm a great conversationalist, but two, I wanted to talk to you because of the latest project that you have, and I'm excited to talk about Thatcher Hates the Bath. And I did read it last night, and my wife and I have pre-ordered two, one to have here in our house, and our my sister-in-law has a year and a half old, and I'm not quite sure where she's at with the bath, but I do remember some bath time challenges. Nothing on this level, but talk a little bit about the story and how it came about for you, Allison.
So I'm a mom. My son is a toddler. He's now 4. He hated the bath from the time he was born. And I think honestly, he didn't start liking it until 2.5, maybe even longer. And so giving him a bath was kind of torture for both of us because he would just scream bloody murder the entire time. And I tried everything you could think of to try to make the bath experience better from him. I would read online, like, what can I do, and get all these suggestions, and I'd put them all into action, and none of them worked. And and then I would talk to my pediatrician and friends who have kids, and a lot of times what would happen is either I would get advice that was kind of obvious, like, well, have you tried bubbles or have you tried toys? And I'd kind of have to sit there and let the person that was giving me their sage advice tell me, like, go on Amazon and they have all these toys and they light up. And I'd sit there thinking to myself, do you think I haven't already tried toys? One. And two, I have to sit here and act like I've never thought of toys and kind of be like, okay, thanks, because they really felt like they were imparting this wisdom on me. And and obviously like people are just trying to be helpful, you
Yeah,
know?
that's what I was going to say is that's part of being a parent is people, for the most part, are very well-intentioned.
Yes.
And you can get some of the worst advice, but you smile through it because what, there's always the chance that somebody will say something like, oh, wow, what a great idea. I can't wait to try that next time. No, that
Yeah.
doesn't usually happen with whatever it is. A lot of times people are like, well, here's what you should do. Like they're like, toys. Yeah. And I could imagine just how many of those that you got in the real life because that's reflected in the book.
Yes, yes. And then also, you're seeking out advice too. It's not just that you're getting unsolicited advice, because that happens as well. But you're also seeking out advice, and you're putting all these things into action. And it's not, while the book is about a kid who hates the bath, and he screams so loudly that he wakes up the entire neighborhood, and everybody comes in with a suggestion that they think is going to be helpful to mom, and she tries everything, and nothing works, and then she ultimately figures out for herself what the solution is. And but at the same time, this book doesn't just, it's like I said, it's about a boy who hates the bath, but I think it really applies to anything when it comes to parenting, like whether you're struggling with mealtime, nap time, bedtime, bath time, getting your kid dressed, whatever it is, getting your kid to listen, getting your kid not to, throw tantrums when you tell them you have to leave the park, whatever it is, you're always reaching out there and trying to get help and solutions. And this book kind of is saying sometimes there's no solution. Sometimes you can try all of these things and it's not going to fix the problem. And you just kind of have to ride it out. And so people will say a lot of times, it won't last forever.
Yeah.
And
Or sometimes they'll be like, oh, he'll grow out of it.
Yeah, he'll grow out of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, but we're here right now.
Yeah.
And the thing that I always tell people, especially new parents, I read that Navy SEALs, when they are being trained to withstand torture, are forced to listen to a baby cry for 8 hours straight. So it is very stressful and it is very hard in the moment. So to say it's not going to last forever isn't really great advice. It's better, I think, to say, figure out what works for you in this moment to get through it. So, for instance, I used to be told all the time, my son's a very picky eater. Well, a kid needs to see a food 100 times before they feel safe eating it. So just make them, a chicken nugget every night with whatever else you're making them. I'm going to make my son chicken nuggets for 100 days before he's going to eat them. Like, do you know all the other things that we have to do? I mean,
Yeah.
So this book is really kind of making fun of that. It's making fun of all the crazy suggestions and all the things that we do and all the helpful suggestions that people give us. And then ultimately finding that the only thing that works is you have to wait it out and figure out, and in the time, in the moment, do what is going to get you through it. So for me, my son hated the bath and he screamed bloody murder. And for a while I tried to give him a bath, and then I stopped and I was like, okay, I'm just going to give him a sponge bath. Quickly turn on the water, not put it anywhere near him, put soap on the washcloth, wash him off, wet the washcloth again, wash him off. I did the same thing with his hair. And then I took him out of the bath, and I did that for a really long time until finally he ended up enjoying the bath. And the funny thing is, now he takes showers. He doesn't even take a bath. He takes showers. So we kind of just skip that whole thing. But I think the other part of the book, I mean, obviously it's a fun, silly, exaggerated chaos situation, blowing up like an everyday thing and making it silly and fun. But it's at the heart of it, it's also, I think a lot of times the parent gets lost when they're raising kids. And and I'm sure you have experienced this when you've talked to a friend about a hard night that you had with your kids, and they always say, "Oh, poor baby." And you're like, "Poor me. I'm the
Yeah.
one that was up all night." Like they're fine. They're
Yeah,
sleeping.
I know.
Like,
Yeah, I'm the one who kept walking up and down the stairs in the condo while my kid just will not go back to sleep.
yeah,
And yeah, it's like, yes, of course, poor baby,
yeah,
but there's two babies in the scenario,
yes,
in the sense that me as a dad, I'm like, hey, little babying my way, and
yeah,
yeah, no, it's exhausting because there are those moments where you're just like, I don't think we're ever going to get out of this. This is just
no,
the rest of my life. I'm just going to have to, I'm just
yeah,
going to have to put up with this.
yeah.
This is just the way it is. And, and the challenges change what they are, but there's always something, it's
Oh
always,
yeah,
yeah,
completely. And people, well, my brother was just here with his kids, and his son's a little older than mine, and he said, no, we still deal with this. We still
yeah,
deal with getting him dressed in the morning. It's just, he dresses himself, but we still have to remind him over and over, whereas I fight my son to get his socks and shoes on. But yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely poor baby. Absolutely
sure, of
100%.
course.
But I feel that, like you said, there's two people in the scenario, and we have to have a healthy mind in order to handle those situations. And I think sometimes it would help if, when somebody saw a mom or a dad that was really struggling, whether it was on the plane, on an airplane, or whatever it was, instead of saying like, their ears are probably popping, maybe you should have given them a bottle or some Tylenol, and you've already done these
Yeah.
things, to say like, how are you? Are you okay? Because it's already stressful when you can't get your child to stop crying, for then to hear other people tell you like, well, maybe you should have tried this, maybe you should have tried that, and you have tried that. So
Right.
it's
And that's still even like the nice approach, because there's also the school of thought of well, I'll tell you what I would have done,
yes,
and here's what worked for me. And
yeah,
the here's what worked for me is something that especially, I don't know, parental figures in our own lives might try and relate to. Well, here's what I did. I'm like, okay, it's a very different time. Those are different kids. Thank you so much. But
yeah,
shut up.
yes,
you know.
yes. And
So
every kid is different. So
yeah.
what works for one kid might not work for the next
There
kid.
there
So
are things that
yeah,
worked for my son that don't work for my daughter,
absolutely.
and vice versa. There are ways in which potty training with my daughter Lucy is like that. Felix was a little bit more of a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So
I hear that girls are easier than boys in that way when
in
potty.
that way,
I've
yeah,
only potty trained my son, and that was a it's and I think back on that, and I remember kids are so funny that it's really true. The moment when you're finally ready to give up and you're like, screw it, I'm going to put the diaper back on and we'll try this again later. You look and they're sitting on the toilet and they're going to the
yeah,
bathroom.
right.
And
It's almost like they could sense it, and they're
yeah,
like,
they can
all right.
sense.
All right, Mom, let me do that. Talk a little bit about the illustrations. Obviously, this is a children's book. A lot of our audience is going to only hear this, but they'll see a little thumbnail that has Thatcher there. Just talk about, sort of. I love the brightness of it. Anybody who's seeing the cover, I like the big eyes. And as someone who has read through many children's books, I'm like, yes, this is what we want from the good ones. This is
Thank
the
you.
fun, the sort of the cartoony nature of some of the things, and talk a little bit about your collaborator on this project, I guess
Okay.
is the best way.
Yes. So, um, my illustrator was amazing. I never met him in person. Everything we did was through email. I never even had a phone conversation. And I one of the most important things that you need when you're doing a children's book is you need a book designer. They're in charge of the layout. They decide where the text goes and the margins and bleed, and they put the ISBN number on and the Library of Congress numbers on, and they're in charge with the entire look of the book. And then what they do is they give that template to the illustrator, and then the illustrator works within that template. So they know I have this much room for the illustration, with leaving white, and then also making sure not to have room for the text and everything. So I had an illustrator originally, and a really somebody who's very good at drawing and sketching and talented. But there's a difference. This is me learning as I was doing this book. There's a difference between being able to draw and being able to draw a children's book. So I ended up having to kind of not work with that person because of the fact that I really needed somebody that could really do a storybook illustration.
Right. So someone who can do a style, different style, doesn't necessarily translate to this,
Yeah.
I think is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes. And also you have a vision in your head, and probably the hardest part for me as a writer, I don't know how to draw, but I do have the visual picture in my head of the way that I want this book to look. And I struggled once I started looking for a new illustrator. I really struggled with finding somebody who could put what was in my head on the page. And so my book designer, she said, well, look, I know this illustrator, my other clients working with them, they're very good. They're very fast. They're very reasonable. Really, really, really experienced illustrators can be anywhere between $10,000 and like $16,000. And some can go as high as like $25,000. So I found this guy who was very reasonable that my book designer referred me to. And basically, I wrote him an email and I said, look, this is how I see the book. It's exaggerated mounting chaos. I want you to continually go from the people with the suggestions to the bathtub growing and growing and growing and getting sillier and sillier and sillier. And so he drew me a sketch, and it was it. It was the mom on the surfboard. It was Thatcher grabbing the rim of the tub and screaming. It had the clownfish in it and the octopus and everything. And it made me so happy because I remember thinking, okay, I work in television. And for me, there was a concern that what I wanted visually wasn't possible in a book. And so this illustrator really showed me that it was. And one of the things I would say to anybody who's doing a children's book, it's important to get the illustrator to draw a sketch for you before you hire them. And don't be kind of happy with it. Don't be like, okay, I think I can work with this person. You have to love what they're doing, because there's going to be so many revisions to the book, and you have to be able to work with someone who's really, really there already, but who will be able, obviously, to take notes and feedback and everything like that. So this Nidham, his contract was 5 illustrations. Five revisions. Each illustration, he'd give me 5 revisions. And that's really generous, because a lot of illustrators will only do 3. So he did 5 sets of revisions for each illustration. And, I tell people a lot, I kind of became a creative director overnight, because even though he could draw whatever I asked him to, you still have to make sure as the writer that the illustrations are telling the story. Like I think a friend said to me, she's a professional illustrator, and she's written a few books of her own. She said, if the person just gives you the text, you're going to have a very boring book. So I remember in this book, there's a section that involves numbers, and it's really like the volume of people and animals that are woken up by this kid screaming. And he had to draw me a bunch of fire trucks, and he had to draw me a bunch of police cars, and they were great illustrations, but the narrative was lost. So I really had to say, okay, we got to rework this so that we understand that this isn't a counting book. It's more, this is the volume of people that are being alerted to this baby crying. And so we need to show in the illustrations that they're all heading somewhere. These aren't just 5 fire trucks, 6 fire trucks. It's the amount of fire trucks that are heading to this house to see what's happening to this screaming baby. So that was a lot more extensive than I realized until I got into it. But it was, so here, like I really said, you got to focus on one fire truck, and the rest are kind of in the background. And that fire truck is pointing, and let's have a sign so that we kind of see like the direction that they're going. And so that's really where, you're telling the story in the illustrations. So
yeah, no, and I think that's the important part, because
yeah,
you as the parent reading this aloud, the child, whatever the age, maybe they can start to read some of the words, but they're going to respond to the pictures. And
yes.
I can imagine if I were reading this to my daughter when she was young, she would see the huskies howling, and I believe she would definitely have howled when she saw the picture. It might be something that still happens when wolves howl.
You'll have to see.
Yeah, I know. I'll have to see what happens
Yeah.
when we get the book. So yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting talking about the collaboration, and obviously, people can of course find the book at Amazon, but I don't know how much you want to get into the specifics of it. But the way that you did it, you worked with a company where it's also in bookstores. It's not only available on Amazon, right?
Right. So Ingram Spark is the major distributor of books, and they get you everywhere. So this is where all the libraries order from. This is where all the bookstores order from. This is this gets you everywhere, and they're not just in the US either. They get you outside of the US as well. So and the thing with doing Ingram Spark versus Amazon, because they'll get you on Amazon. Like the minute I put my book on Ingram, I'm just going to shorten it. The minute I put it on Ingram, it was on Amazon. It was on Barnes and Noble. It's a lot of other places. Another one that librarians use called Baker. And with Amazon, there's a couple reasons why I didn't just publish it on Amazon. One was, then they're the publisher. So I'm no longer the publisher of my book, whereas with Ingram I am. And when you put it on Amazon, then that's the only place it can be. And only Amazon will that's the only, when people want your book, they can only go to Amazon to get it. So most bookstores and libraries do not work with Amazon because they don't get the wholesale discount. So, and even with Ingram, it's still hard because the printing services cost a certain amount, and then you're also giving a discount to the bookstores and to the libraries because they're going to do the wholesale. They're going to expect the wholesale amount, but you can't set it like too low because then you won't make any money, and they don't allow that. So it's really complicated. I've had bookstores want the book, but they've told me you have to buy it for us and you have to send it to us, and then you have to invoice us, and you have to give us the 40% off because of the fact that the wholesale isn't enough for them to incentivize them to get the book. So in a lot of ways, you make, when you publish traditionally, you really don't make that much money. But if you self-publish, all the royalties, you make all the royalties. So for instance, like, and these are just things I've learned. Stores like Barnes and Noble, for instance, when you walk into their store, they haven't paid for anything. Everything has been given to them to sell. And then if it doesn't sell, they can send it back. So when it's self-publishing, they can't send it back. So it's a lot of why they don't want to work with self-published authors. They only want to work with like the big five, like Random House and Penguin. So, but at the same time, you know, my mom wrote a children's book and Houghton Mifflin published it. And her illustrator did all of Mr. Rogers' original books. She illustrated all Mr. Rogers' original books. And I talked to her before this book was ready, and she was telling me, you know, marketing is the biggest thing with this, with books. You can't rely, even in traditional publishing, they don't do anything for you. You have to do it all yourself. So you have to call the bookstores and say, hey, can I do a book reading here and a signing? And then they'll order the books from the publisher, but then you also have to guarantee, like, I can bring 25 people here. I can guarantee that 25 people will show up and buy this book. So, you know, it's a little bit of a racket, but you have to find ways to work around that. So, you know, with me, I'm the one marketing this, and I've just done a ton of research, and a lot of reasons why a book is becomes a New York Times bestseller. It's because of bulk orders. So people partner with like Walmart and Target and other brands, and that's how their books get, like, you know, 5,000 orders in a week. And then that's really what puts you on the list as a New York Times bestseller. So you really have to, you can't just put your book up there and think that people are going to find it. You have to help them find it. And so that's really a big part of publishing, whether you're doing it as a traditional publisher or as a self-published author. Like my mom, I remember we went to a book signing for her book when I was younger, and I thought that her publisher set it up, and they didn't. It was all her and the illustrator and the other author on the book. So yeah.
One of the things that you explained to me when we talked yesterday over at the delicious Tallyrand was that if you had published with Amazon, it would only be paperback. So and I think a lot of us who have had a lot of children's books, we've had plenty that are paperback, but you need the more durable hardcover, especially for a book your child likes, because of just how often really it gets dropped more than anything, you know? So, so I think I found that was something that I had no idea. And what you're just saying about even the big publishers, you know, you'll hear about, you know, people who are doing book tours and that, you know, that they're don't think that they're necessarily in it for, you know, just the huge amount of money that comes from it. It's really the awareness. And a lot of times you're out the money, and that's why you are doing such prestigious interviews like with the Bladtcast, which we appreciate. We were able to fit you into our busy schedule. So, and I think it's interesting. You know, we've known people that have published, you know, various degrees of books, and I don't think I realized quite the extent there. And I think that anybody thinking of self-publishing their book will probably find that explanation about Amazon very useful, because I certainly didn't know that. And the amount of work you were telling me yesterday, that you get up in the morning and you're just sending emails for like hours to anybody who might be interested. And it makes sense, sort of those bulk orders, you know, and, you know, just getting the book included there. So as we mentioned, it is of course available on Amazon. You can get it on barnesandnoble.com. You can get it all those places. And I think that that's really what they need to know. It is called Thatcher Hates the Bath. And boy, that kid sure does hate the bath. I think that is not false advertising. We've looked at some of the ways in which he did not enjoy the bath. Is there a preferred way that you're like, well, if all things are equal, people are Googling Thatcher Hates the Bath. Is there anywhere you prefer that somebody look to purchase it from, or just so long as they get it?
Well, I do want to say one thing real quickly. One of the other reasons why I wanted to publish on Ingram is because they make your book available in hardback on Amazon. So you can go to Amazon and buy my book on hardback, and you can also buy it on paperback. But that wouldn't have been available if I didn't set my book up at Ingram. And I do think, in terms of books on the shelf and making your book putting your book in the best shape possible so that it does belong on the shelf with the traditional published books, you really do want to have it in hardcover as well as paperback. I don't like paperback books as much. I find them.
Yeah, well, as someone who takes a lot of books out of the library
Yeah.
for my kids, right now, my son Felix is really enjoying those collections of Garfield comic strips, and some of
Yeah.
them are for, well, I mean, the first ones are for like 45 years ago, but the copies that they have are from, like, the 2010s, and they're so beat up that
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh, when we return this, are they going to retire this book? And they don't have them from much earlier than that.
Right.
Because of the fact that they're just not durable. And I think children's books in particular, I always enjoyed a nice, like, big hardcover book when it came out, but I can understand you can stock a lot more paperbacks, but especially for kids, I don't know how durable it is,
Yeah, no, exactly. So yeah, in terms of where people order it, anywhere, I just buy the book, and it doesn't matter if you order it on Amazon, on Barnes and Noble, if you see it at a bookstore and you pick it up, like wherever you go, Ingram, that's
Yeah.
another place to get it. Uh, all those places, all those places you're buying my book. So I'm happy if you get it anywhere. And I think, like, the one of the things that is really cool is when you finally have a published children's book, is that your book is in the homes of so many families, and people are reading it with their kids, and they're bonding with their kids. And that to me is why you do it.
Yeah, and I feel like, once it's out for a little while, and people, start leaving those comments and feedbacks, I would assume that there will be kids who are like, well, this Thatcher sure is being crazy about the bath. I guess the bath's not so bad, because I feel like
Yeah.
it's almost like if you get one of those stories, like, oh yeah, your book made it okay for my kid to get in the bath. You're like, well, yeah, that's that,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really what it's for. When we were talking yesterday, you mentioned if you Google Thatcher Hates the Bath, something else comes up, which I think is actually really funny. I can let you reference it, but you had mentioned, I guess, that Margaret Thatcher allegedly hated to take a bath. is something that
So
comes up?
I Googled my book, as
Yeah,
I've been doing, just to see, like, what's new that's coming out. I've had a feature article and a couple other things, a press release. So I just kind of checking out to see how things are going and where it is in terms of popularity. And so, yes, it came up what my book was about, and made sure to tell people who may have thought that I was making a political statement
yeah,
about Margaret Thatcher, who apparently didn't always bathe, or had a a very, like, interesting way of bathing. I don't even know. It was it
yeah.
was not it was not something that I thought about at all. Thatcher was one of the names on the list of names when I was looking for what I was going to name my son, and I liked the name. It was on one of the top three. I didn't go with that, and so I just chose it for that reason. And
Yeah, your
didn't
first
think
choice
about it
was,
at
of
all.
course, was Stabler. Your second choice was Cragen. Your third choice was Tutuola, which I tried to encourage you to go with
Yes, you
little
did.
Tutuola, but
Tutuola Hates the Bath.
yeah. But
Maybe that'll be the sequel.
I was going to say that might be the sequel. Yeah. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew where they could get it. And as I said, I read it and I have my pre-order in. So I look forward to people checking it out. And look, if anybody sees it in the bookstore, go ahead and take a picture. And, we'd hope you'd buy it. But take a picture of you holding it up and you can send it to us. You can always get it to me at ChristianDMZ, at Bladtcast, or even Bladtcast@gmail.com. Those are all the people know how to get in touch with me. I can be found. And
What a Tallyrand.
just look for me at Tallyrand.
Yeah,
in all
just
honesty.
look for you at Tallyrand.
Yeah, that's probably the easiest thing to do. And a little earlier, you referenced something that I feel like we can't ignore before we end. You were talking about sort of the real world heroes with this designation, but you gave me the opportunity to bring up the movie poster for Navy SEALs.
Oh, yes.
Because you were talking about that. And I'm going to have to be honest, this is not my favorite Charlie Sheen movie. It goes Major League and then Hot Shots, the first one. And then it kind of levels off a little bit. But I guess your favorite probably is Navy SEALs, right, Allison?
Yep, Navy SEALs. That's the one.
That's definitely the one. If only they had turned that into a television series, and you could have been staffed.
You and I should do it.
Let's find out who owns the intellectual property.
Yes.
And let's see what we can do there.
Yes.
Well, it's been delightful having you on the show.
Thank you for having me. This has been like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's almost like talking to me at breakfast, but there were no pancakes on the table. So,
no.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got waffles. I don't want to. Yeah, I want people to know that you're a waffle person, not a.
Yeah, I'm a waffle person for sure.
Yeah, but what you're not is a House of Pies person. I think we've established that. So yeah, best of luck next time. Somebody's gonna go to House of Pies based on this, and I want that picture too. Send me a picture of you at House of Pies with a big thumbs down after you try the pie.
With holding my book.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Bring the book to House of Pies.
By the way, I got the hard.
Oh my gosh! Wait a minute. So you're holding up the hardcover.
Yes.
So let's see that there. Oh my gosh! Look at that. And
I'm very happy with it.
I got rid of you for a second.
Oh, that's okay.
we moved.
Oh,
my
eyes!
Everything worked out. But so you have the hardcover, and
I do, and the paperback.
And I've got those coming my way. And by the time people see this, the book will be available. For the audience listening, it'll be available for, what was it? Is it National Read a Book Day? Is that what it's called? Or
yes. So you can order the book now because it's available now to pre-order. And then it officially becomes available on September 6th, which is National Read a Book Day.
Yes, which
I read my book.
I will read your book that day, and I might even read another book. But you know what? Honestly, I'll probably just read your book twice.
Okay, good.
I got 2 kids. Anything else you want people to know? I know you.
Oh, I am doing a Goodreads giveaway. So Goodreads does these giveaways, and mine started today. So it's from today until the launch of the book, which is the 6th, and I'm giving away 10 signed copies of the book. So if you go to Goodreads and find Thatcher Hates the Bath, you can enter to win.
Well, there you go. And it's signed by you. Any chance that your dog Potato is going to put a little paw print on there, or most likely just signed by you?
Signed by me. I'll talk to him. I don't know. He might.
Okay. Anybody who wants the book can make sure that they also bring it to have Edward Furlong sign it.
Oh yes.
I'll try to do that.
If you're Star Trek fans, what's very funny about how we have these full circle moments in Hollywood. So Jolene was on the show, and I was only on it for the fellowship, and then I went on to work on other stuff. But I started teaching cycle classes at one point. There was a period where I taught cycle classes for like 5 years, and she actually took one of my classes. And I just remember thinking, like, this is so weird. Like I'm setting her, I was helping her set the bike settings. She had gone with a friend and never taken a class before. And she was very nice.
Oh,
I
well,
didn't,
that's good.
I didn't remind her that I did a fellowship, you know.
Yeah, that just but well, look, I like to hear when people encounter celebrities and they're nice.
Yes.
So, well, in any case, I appreciate you doing this, and people can find the book. They can find out more about you and your work. Just Google, and we definitely had a great chat. Everybody go out and get the book. That's really the key right now. You get the book, and if you find me, I'll sign it too. I didn't have anything to do with it, but we're getting me. We're getting Edward Furlong. Maybe you could even get Chris Kattan to sign it, but most likely he's going to tell you no. Anyway, on that note, I want to thank Allison Intrieri. I want to thank Thatcher for not enjoying the bath, and of course, everybody's favorite dog, Potato. That is all the time we have for now, but we will see you next time on the Bladtcast.